It's 12:10 and we'll go ahead and get started. So welcome everyone to this workshop on creating your own personal portfolio. Personal portfolios are very important regardless of whatever field you're in. It's an excellent way to demonstrate who you are, what you have to offer. It's if you're applying to a job or applying to anything in general, you want to show off your career skills, then a personal portfolio is an excellent way to do that. And so in this workshop, we'll be going over what a portfolio should look like. We'll look at some examples. We'll look at some key characteristics that a portfolio should have. And then we'll look at how to create one from scratch using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And then at the end, we'll quickly go over what it means to host a website and how to get started with hosting your own portfolio. So what are the functions that we want to focus on in this personal portfolio? Well, there are three main things. One is, as I said, you want to demonstrate who you are. What's good about a personal portfolio is that unlike any type of social media or LinkedIn, where you're restricted to the format of the social media, with a personal portfolio, you have full control over what's displayed on a screen at all times. So that level of liberty makes you, gives you as much freedom as you want to demonstrate who you are in whatever way you want. And so what we want to do with this portfolio is you want to display your projects or what you worked on, whatever that may mean for your fields. Here we're seeing that there's a lot of people studying a lot of different things. There's some people in computer science, some people in economics or other non-technical fields. So regardless of whatever field you're in, you've definitely worked on some project. You have something to show that you've created, something that you've designed, something that or like a community service project that you worked on. If you're in computer science, obviously something that you've coded. So that's what you want to show with this portfolio. And then the last thing that a portfolio does is it's a perfect perfect opportunity to showcase your drive and creativity. Just the fact that you're making a personal portfolio to begin with demonstrates that you have that initiative, and the more time you spend making it look nice or add special features to it, it shows that you're a more creative, ambitious person, and that's always something you want to do when you're presenting yourself to a recruiter or a client or whoever you want to show your career skills to. So when we're building a personal portfolio, we want to focus on having a minimum viable product. So what is a minimum viable product? It's a basis for what at each step that you're creating this portfolio, you want to have something that you can show someone. So the very first time you create the portfolio or the very first time you work on it, you want to make sure you have some key things. You don't want to have like a full mess. So these are the key components that you want to make sure you have in your portfolio. First, you want to have the landing page, which is the first thing that you see when you go into your website. In the landing page, obviously, you want to make it something that catches the attention of the viewer, or it demonstrates some aspect of your personality. You have a lot of creativity, a lot of opportunity to personalize your landing page however you want. You also want to have an about section or any form of way of displaying some personal information about yourself. And you can also display what your skills are, where you study, what your mission is or your objective. So you want to make sure you have a section to talk about yourself. And then one of the most important parts is your work/projects. You want to dedicate a section to what you've been working on, what you can offer. And this is what makes a portfolio so unique, is that you get to display this very freely. And this is your place to do so. And then also something you probably want to have is a contact section, a place where a person can email you or connect to your social media accounts through this personal portfolio. And then the rest, these are just the key components. This is what you want to have in your minimum viable product. But the rest, you decide what you want it to look like. If you want to add special features, something dynamic that moves across the screen, that's completely up to you. And but before you get to that, you want to focus on having the minimum viable product. So I've put here a few examples for what portfolios look like. First, let's look at like a high level portfolio. Can everyone see my desktop, by the way, when I switch the tab? Can I get a thumbs up or something? Yep. Okay. So this is someone who's like a professional computer scientist. So you can tell they've put a lot of time and effort into this portfolio. They built it from scratch. You can see when I scroll here, this little thing pops up. They have that sense of dynamic, that dynamic component. You can click here and see their experience or their resume. And here is the actual portfolio part, which is their work. And the work ranges from a different set of things. It can be this presentation on machine learning or these workshops. And then you can see here, they've created different tabs. And then you got the skills and then the contact section. So you got everything that we need from the minimum viable product here. Obviously, she's had a lot of time to elaborate it into something that looks very nice. I think it's only fair if I show you what my personal portfolio looks like. I've been working on this for just a few weeks, so I haven't had that much time to put like absolutely everything on it, but I'm pretty happy with what it looks like right now. This is my landing page. Brief description, I do software development and industrial engineering. I got this navigation bar where you can go to my LinkedIn and GitHub. You know, a quick about me section with my skills. You can download my resume here. And some of my work, there's a section that I still need to work on. I need to add some more here. But like I said, I think it's only fair if I show what my personal portfolio looks like. And then finally, I've only been showing like computer science related portfolios. There's my friend who's studying filmmaking, so completely non-technical. And he created this portfolio. And as you can see, he's got his about section, who he is, what he's interested in, what his mission is. And then you can see his the work that he's worked on, the movies that he's worked on. You know, ranges from music videos to short films to different types of movies. And then you got the contact and the location. So yeah, those are a few examples of what portfolios look like. I want to show you one more example, which is this one. Doesn't look as nice as the other ones, but it has everything you need. It has the about me, it has the projects. I want you guys to try to guess whose portfolio this is. So take a look at the name. This is Mark's homepage. Take a guess as to whose portfolio this is.
Mark Zuckerberg?
Yeah, exactly. It's Mark Zuckerberg. So someone found this in the internet. And this is Mark Zuckerberg's first ever website. And it's not that impressive, but it's, you know, it just shows that you just want to have something that demonstrates who you are. And then, you know, he added this little sense of, you know, he's displaying, you know, a little feature that shows his personality, the little yellow eye that blinks at you. He made it unique. And now he's a billionaire. So it's always, you know, the portfolio, don't put too much thought into it. You just want to have something, again, the minimum viable product. So there's two approaches to creating a personal portfolio. You can either code it from scratch, which is what we're going to look at in this workshop using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, or you can use a template that they offer online. And you may have heard of these sites before: Wix, Squarespace, WordPress, and there's a lot more. What these templates do is pretty much you just drag and drop items onto a web page and it creates it for you. And it makes it very, very easy to create a web page. But let's look at let's compare the two, creating a project from scratch versus using a template. When you're coding from scratch, it can be a little time consuming, but I will hear it, but not always, because there's a learning curve. And once you learn how to once you have practice and you know the fundamentals of HTML and CSS, it becomes very a lot easier. The efficiency goes up and it becomes a lot more intuitive. So at first it might be time consuming, but once you become a little more fluent in it, it might be worth it to take your time to learn how it works. Also, when you're coding from scratch using HTML and CSS, you have a lot more freedom and flexibility. You can literally design the page however you want. You're not restricted to any of the boundaries that you might find using a template online. And also coding from scratch, it looks better from a technical perspective. If you're in a technical field, especially computer science, you're kind of expected to code from scratch as opposed to using Wix or Squarespace. But I'm not ruling off the option. For some people, it's easier. And if you're not seeing yourself using web development that much in the future, then these are completely viable. You also, if you're using an online template, you get access to dynamic features without the need of JavaScript. So they do all the work for you. All you have to do is add it onto your web page. But as I said, there is limited functionality. You're limited to whatever they offer you. You don't have that freedom of coding, any idea that you have. And just to assure you guys, my friend here who's in filmmaking, he used an online template called Wix. And you can see he was able to add this cool feature where it's called parallax, where the back of the screen scrolls at a different rate than the front of the screen. And that's a lot harder to do using HTML and CSS. So that's just one benefit of using online templates. But I'm in favor of coding it from scratch, and that's what we're going to look at right here. So we're going to be using Visual Studio Code. I sent the link out earlier if you want to download it and follow along. I'll send it again. It might get a little annoying to be switching back and forth between this tab and Visual Studio Code. So if you just want to follow along and look at what I do, that's completely fine. So I actually have Visual Studio Code here opened. This is what you first see when you go into Visual Studio Code. And what we want to do first is create our directory, our working directory, which is where we're going to have all our files, our HTML file, our CSS file, and our JavaScript file. And we're going to have it all in one place so that we can connect the files and open up the web page without any problems once it's finished. So we want to open a folder, and I'm going to create a new folder. I'll call it portfolio. This is on my desktop, by the way, which is just, you can open it wherever you want. And okay, I'm going to open up this folder. And so here we are within the folder. We don't have any documents in the folder yet, so we can click here to add a new file within this folder, and we'll call it index.html. And I'll go over what that means right now. And so if I go to my desktop, you can see here I have my portfolio folder, and I have index.html. So what is HTML? Let's go over that first before we start modifying our index.html file. Oh, you're asking, RSVP means, it's a French word, which means réservez s'il vous plaît. Oh, my French isn't that good, sorry. It just means you're registering for an event, you're reserving a spot for an event. Yeah, and this will be recorded and uploaded later. It'll be uploaded to YouTube, and the link will be shared with everyone who's registered for DSE. So yeah, what is HTML? HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language. And it's a type of programming language that holds the raw elements of a web page. So when you go to a web page, let's say I go to my portfolio here. You might have seen this before. If you click inspect, and you'll see the elements of the web page. These are all the elements that describe the information that's being displayed on the screen, but it's the raw information. The HTML only says like there's a text right here. There's an image right here. It doesn't talk about the display in the terms of what it looks like. It just says, okay, there's a text right here. And you can see here the different types of elements that we have. We have a header and an image, and we'll go over what this all means right now. So the format for HTML, when you create an element, there's these components. You have a start tag, which defines what type of element you're going to be displaying on the screen. and then you add the content of the element in between the start tag and the end tag. And the end tag, all the end tags have this backward slash that says, okay, from here on, starting here, you're gonna write some text and then stop it once you reach the end. And then whatever's in the middle is the text that's displayed on the screen. Some other tags, depending on the tag type, the format looks like this. So we'll look at some types of elements that we'll have on a HTML screen. But first, this is what the overall format looks like. So when you create an HTML file, the first thing you want to have is this little piece of text right here, which says doc type HTML. And what this does is, since we want to put this into the internet, our browsers read an HTML file from top to bottom. So the first thing they want to read is kind of an introduction telling them what type of file they're about to read. And this tells the browser that you're about to read an HTML file. And this is very crucial. The HTML file isn't going to read online if it doesn't have this. So always remember to add doc type HTML. And then within all your HTML code, you need to have a start tag, which is your start HTML tag. And then at the end of all the code, you're going to have an end tag, which is the end of the HTML. And again, that's just so that the computer knows when the start and the end is, and when to start and stop reading whatever the code is. And there's two main components that we're going to look at within the HTML, which is the head and the body. And they do different things. So let's first look at what the head does. So the head in our HTML file contains all the non-visible information regarding the website. So this is kind of like a space where the website is able to store data that isn't necessarily going to be shown on the screen. So this might include the title of the website. So what that means, the title is what's shown in the tab right here. So my title is Gabriel Escobar, which is my name. My friend's title is Home Adrian Sobratum. The title is just that. And again, it gives more information about the website without displaying it on the actual website itself, on the screen itself. We can also store metadata within the head. What metadata means is it's just a set of tags that give more information about the website. And what it does, for example, a website that you can have metadata talking about the type of information that you find in the website. So for example, you can say who the author is, or the type of content that you're about to see. And the purpose of metadata, the main purpose at least, is for search engines. So you can have information about what's on the website in the metadata, and then a search engine looks through the metadata and it'll help you get your website to show up first in the search engine. And then also a very important aspect of the HTML head is that's where you get to link to your CSS and JavaScript files, so they all know that they're talking to each other. Again, if you don't put this in your HTML file, it's going to show, but it's not going to have the styling or JavaScript functionalities connected to that file. So let's start. I feel like I'm talking a lot. Let's start coding a little bit just so we start getting an idea. So again, like I said, the very first thing you want to add is doc type HTML. And you can see here, Visual Studio Code recommended me to write that right away and knows that this is an HTML file. So that's the very first thing we need. And then we want to start writing our HTML code. So I have the start tag and the end tag for HTML. And now we get to add all the metadata and the information that we want to have stored about this website. So we can have our title, and my title is going to be my portfolio. So as you can see, we have the start tag, end tag, and then the text in the middle, the content in the middle. We'll do the same thing. We'll add some metadata. So the way you add metadata, you say meta. You can say the type of data this is I'll say who the author is, and then the content is Escobar, which is my name. You added a very good point. We do need a head head tag. And close of the head tag. And actually Visual Studio Code recognized that I didn't have a head tag. That's why it was giving me some errors there, you can see. So that was a good point. Thanks for bringing that up. So we have the title, some metadata, and then we'll add our, we'll leave it like that for now. So this is just, again, some information about the website. We'll do the link to the style and script later because we don't have these files yet. So we'll be able to connect them in a second. So then let's look at the HTML body. So the body is where we have all the elements that we're actually going to be displaying on the screen. So some basic elements, and you can pretty much do any website you want with these elements, although you can look online to find more if you want to do some more specific stuff. But this should do the job, at least for the beginning. So you can have a header tag, the header usually like a big title, and you'll notice that it says H1. There's different types of headers. I think it goes down to six different types of headers. And what it does, H1 is the biggest type of header, and then H2 is a little smaller, H3 is a little smaller than that, H4 is a little smaller than that. And so that just helps you organize your titles based on, maybe the importance of what you're showing on the screen right now, or, you can give different styling to different types of headers. So yeah, so that's the header tag. Next, we have a paragraph, which is where you're writing text that isn't a title. You want to add maybe like a little blog post or a description. You do that using the paragraph tag, and that's just with a P. And again, you want to remember to add a start tag and the end tag, and then the content in the middle for what you want to have displayed. There's also a link tag. The format for a link tag, you have an A, and then it says hyperreference, the href, and then you add the URL to whatever you want to link to in there. And then if you want to add, some text that will be associated with the link, you add the text right there. So it'll show some text, and then that text, usually it pops up in blue, and you can click it and it'll take you to that link. You can add a button, and here you can usually write some JavaScript code to perform some special function once you click the button. And again, the text in the middle. And then we have lists. So this is an unordered list, UL. There's also ordered lists, which puts the list items in numerical notation, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then you add your list items in there, and it'll put them in a vertical list notation. So why don't we start actually putting up the code for the content for this website. So we want to open up the body. And let's just add a title for now. So we can say, welcome to my portfolio. You want me to zoom in a little here? Is that better? Or do you want me to zoom in more? Okay. So we can say, welcome to my portfolio, and then we can add some text below that says, this is a place for me to showcase. So we have our header and a little text below it. So at this point, we kind of want to see what this looks like. We just have the code, but we actually want to see what it looks like on the screen. So if you have Visual Studio Code, I recommend adding an extension. If you want to add an extension, you can just search here called open in, oh, that's here. You can search for an extension here, and you can search for open in browser. You can see I already downloaded it. So you go here and you click open in browser, and that'll help you see the web page as you're building it. So let's go back to my file. So once you download this extension, it should literally just do it within 5 seconds. You can right click here and open in default browser or any browser. And there it is. There's what we have so far. We have our header and then our text. Yeah, you could download a live server, and we'll do that. We'll see what that looks later on. But ideally, as you're creating the website, you don't want to be working on a live server. You want to be working in your local computer so that you're able to make changes more fluently or more freely. And then once you have something that you're happy with, then you put it into a live server. So as you're updating the website, it's better to do it locally. It takes less time, and it also less computational power. So yeah, this is what we have so far. Welcome to my portfolio. Let's look at what else we can add. We can add images and other resources to our HTML as well. So this might include, a JPEG file, an MP4 file, a PDF, or etc. And the way we're going to do this is by adding another folder to this directory. So right now our directory looks like this. So I'm working on my desktop. So this is my desktop directory. This is like the path to reach where my portfolio is. And what we're going to do is add a folder onto this portfolio folder that we have right now called resources, where I'm going to put in my resources that I want to, my images and the other type of resources that I want to put into the website. So if we see here, this is my folder where I have my portfolio. I'm going to go ahead and add a new folder in there. I'll call it resources. And then here in this folder, I can add, whatever I want to show. So I'm in Toronto right now. I want to put a picture of Toronto. So I have this picture called Toronto. Oh, we're not. I'll download a picture of Toronto right now. This also shows how easy it is to add images from online. You can just, I'll save this image as Toronto.jpg. Hold on. Sorry, I don't know what's going on here. Okay. Actually, this is a text file, so I'm gonna have to add a JPEG file. I'm sorry. I don't know what happened to this Toronto.jpg file. Here, I have some pictures of, I have this picture called taquitos, like tacos. I'll put that in. And that'll be the picture that I'll show in my portfolio. It's literally just a picture of tacos. I'll put that into my portfolio. So the way we do that is by hold on, I don't know where my Chrome. Okay, the way we do that is by Hold on, I think my computer is having some problems. It's not showing the Google Chrome. I'm gonna have to open the slides again. Okay. So we add an image by opening up this tag that says img, and then we say the source of where that image is, or the path to that image. And since it knows that we're already in this directory, which is users, like whatever your username is, desktop portfolio, the only thing you have to add is the extra part, which is going into this folder and then adding, going into this image or file or whatever you have there. So if we go back to Visual Studio Code, we can say here, img source equals, and here it knows that it has, that we have resources, this folder in here, and we have this picture of some tacos. And yeah, that should be it. I'm just gonna go ahead and save. And then we can open a browser again and hold on. Okay, I'm having some technical difficulties. I'm not gonna spend too much time on it because we need to move on, but that's how it should work. I think this image just doesn't work. I don't know what's going on with my computer right now. And that's how you would add an image. And I'll just move on to the next section. It'll all come together later. So a very important part of our HTML body is we want to be able to create divisions. And what the divisions allow us to do is to organize our file into different sections. And since we're building this portfolio, we want to have, an about me section, a projects or some of my work section, a contact section. And by dividing these into sections, one, it makes the HTML file more organized. And two, it also makes it easier once you're creating the styling with using CSS, you can style different sections differently. And using these divisions, it makes that a lot easier. So the way you create divisions is you can either give a division a class or an ID. A class is more general, so different divisions or different elements can have the same class. And then once you create the styling, it'll do the styling for all the elements with that class. Or you can do a division with a single ID, which is a unique ID. And once you do the styling, it'll only do the styling for the element with that ID. And then you have the closing tag for that class, for that division, and then everything in between is the content that you have within that division. So all of the things you want to display in your About Me page is within that division. That the actual division tag, it doesn't add any more information to the screen. It just organizes it into chunks. So to make it more easier to, it makes it more easier to read if you're reading an HTML file, and it also makes it easier to add the styling, like I said. So let's add some divisions. So we could have a division called About Me. And within this division, we could say, we could add a header that says, and I'm using H2 because I already used H1, which is going to be the main header. So I'm using H2 and I'll say About Me. Then underneath, I can say, I'm an engineering student who is eager to learn. And then we can add one more division called projects. Sorry, class equals projects. And then I'll add another header called projects. And then I can say, these are some of projects I have worked on. So right away, you can see this is a little more organized in the sense that if I want to edit some stuff in the About Me section, I know exactly where to go. And I know that everything that's going to be in that section is going to be between this closing and ending tag. Same for the project section. So again, the actual division class doesn't add anything. It just helps you organize. So we can see what this looks like right now, the way we have it right now. And here we have the About Me and the project section. So great. I don't know why it keeps getting rid of my Chrome tab every time I, okay. So some extra tips as you're working for, as you're working with, wait, sorry, I'm just seeing your chat now. Oh, never mind. So some extra tips as you're working with HTML. There's some convention, and this always helps if you have other people reading your code. And the convention is to name your HTML file either index.html or home.html. That usually makes it a lot easier to, if you're looking through someone else's portfolio, you know exactly where to go to find their HTML code. It's either going to be index or home. So that's just a recommendation if you want to follow the convention. Another thing, always remember to close your HTML tags. If you don't, there's some browsers that have a little more difficulty reading the HTML code if they don't know where to stop reading. So that'll always create a problem. So always make sure to close your HTML tags. Another thing is you can make comments in HTML, and that's another thing that will help you organize your code a lot better. And comments, you write comments like this. So if we want to go here and say, this is where this doesn't get added into the file, but it just helps me read this file a lot better. So, and then the last HTML tip is to go online and browse through the different types of elements that you can use. There's a lot of them out there, and this can help you find the best fit for your documents, for whatever website you want to make. So next, let's talk about CSS. So CSS, it's a file that describes the presentation of the HTML elements that you have, that you already created in your HTML file. So for every element in your HTML file, you can give it a description to talk about, what size you want it to be, where do you want to locate it, what color do you want it to be. All the type of styling decisions are made in your CSS file. So let's create a CSS file, and we do that by adding a file, and we'll call it, again, the convention is to call it style.css. And we want to link it to our HTML file. So this is something I talked about in the beginning. Just putting the files together doesn't do anything unless you link them together. They know how to communicate between each other. So the way you do that is by going to the header in your HTML file. And you write this code right here. So say link, the relationship of this link is going to be style sheet. So it's going to be looking for a style sheet. And the reference or the link is going to be the name of the file, which is style.css. So again, this is just so that the HTML document knows how to style the elements that are written below. So what are the types of things you can do with CSS? Like I mentioned, CSS looks like this. You say what element you want to describe. So let's say we want to change what H1 files look like. So the headers. So we want a convention for all header elements within this document. We want the color to be like this. This is the notation, or one of the notations in which you can describe colors. Sometimes you can just write like blue or red or something like that, but not all colors can be described just with a single word. So they have this good thing called RGB, or the red, green, blue scale. And it says, and so it says how red you want it, how green you want it, and how blue you want it. So this actually outputs yellow because it's a mixture of red and green. But it can get kind of complicated. So I recommend going online and looking for, CSS color wheel, and you can choose a color like based on a color wheel, and it'll tell you what to put into the color tab or the RGB element, a component of that tab. And yeah, and then you can talk about other stuff like font size, or you can add a background. And then here you'll notice, so you'll remember I have a division called About Me. So if I press period About Me, it'll edit the elements within that About Me division, which is what we wanted to do to begin with. And so we can give a general convention for everything that's within the About Me section. So let's go ahead and do that actually. So let's start editing our CSS file. So first thing we want to do, maybe let's change the header. Right now we have this header that says, welcome to my portfolio. So that's our header 1. We can change the color to, let's say we want it blue. And also remember to add a semicolon at the end. Otherwise, that's kind of like, it knows when to stop reading the line once it reaches the semicolon. So let's just start something like simple like that, color blue. Let's save the file, and if we reload this, you'll notice the header is now blue, which is pretty cool. And this wouldn't be possible if we didn't link it to the style sheet. And that's like, right now it looks very simple, but if you spend a lot of time on CSS, there's a lot of things you can change. You can, and eventually, literally just working around the HTML and CSS is how you end up with websites that look like the ones I showed earlier. So the HTML and CSS is all you need. Now it's a matter of deciding how you want to change each element to make it look like how you want. So some tips to do that is to not get fixated on things looking a certain way. You might have this idea of exactly how you want your website to look like, but that can take a long time to accomplish. So first focus again on having your minimum viable product, and then spend some time on adding the special features with CSS to make it look exactly like how you want. But don't spend too much time on CSS because it can get very frustrating and you might not be making too much progress. The next tip is to use the color picker, which is this website. I'll be sharing this presentation with everyone so you can have access to these websites or to these links. And this is kind of like what I was describing. You can choose a color and you can choose a shade and everything, and it'll tell you what to input into the CSS to get that color. So again, here's the RGB, which is a combination of red, green, and blue. And so let's say we want this green color. I can copy and paste this RGB value. And here you can already see this little square recognizes that it's a green value. So I'll go ahead and save. And if I reload this, it's exactly that green color that I just picked from this website. So that's very helpful. You can also change the fonts that are being displayed on the screen. And here's a website that shows you all the different fonts that you can use. There's a lot of different types of fonts, so you can just get creative with whatever one you want to use. And this is the notation. You want to say you can use font style, font weight, font variant, font stretch, and also font family. Font family, these are the families So let's say we want to say we want this type of font. So we can say font family, and Visual Studio Code knows it's recommending me what to type there. So I can press tab to choose what it's recommending me. And here it is, it's Arial. I wanna use this font family. So this is kind of what the notation looks like. The sans serif just means that it doesn't have like little sticks coming out of it. Like these are what the serif looks like. You can see it's a little more detailed. The sans serif is a little more simple. So we want a sans serif and Arial, which is part of the Helvetica class. And so once we reload this, you'll see the font change as well. So I recommend looking at this website and choosing whatever font you want. And it's very helpful. And then, some more tips. One thing I recommend for your portfolio is to choose a color palette. So you can look online for color palettes. I have an example right here. And stick to colors within that color palette so that the website looks more consistent. So if we go back to my website, I chose a color palette similar to this one. So I have brown, green, and then like this light blue and gray. So within my website, I have kind of the same colors, because I've noticed if you mix too many colors around, then it looks a little messy. So try to stick to a nice consistent set of colors that look nice together. And then the last tip is to add comments. So comments look like this. The way you make comments in CSS is different from the way you make them in HTML. In CSS, so you might want to say something like about the section to start talking about me. And then, like I said, we have this division with the class about me. So we can say about me and then open up these parentheses and say we want the color here and everything within the about me section to be red. And red is a simple color, so I can just type the word red. And so if I now go to the website, everything in the about me section is red. And you can do this for any division, like I mentioned before. Yeah, thanks for deleting that. So I know we're running out of time right now, but I'll quickly go over JavaScript. JavaScript is an entire programming language. To learn it from scratch, take some time, but I'll just show you the types of functionalities that you can use using JavaScript. So as you can see, JavaScript is kind of similar to Java. If anyone, I know there's some computer science students here. If you've used Java before, it's a little similar. You have arrays, you have variable declarations in a very similar way. One thing to note that's different between Java and JavaScript is you can declare either a variable or a constant. So variables are variables that you're able to change later on within the code, whereas constants stay the same the entire time and you can't change them. And then you call functions like this. You write the function name and then some parentheses. And this is an example of an array as well. So let's create a JavaScript file real quick. And again, the convention is to call it script.js. And right away, Visual Studio Code knows that I'm writing a JavaScript file because of the JS extension. We want to remember to link it to the HTML file. So one thing to keep in mind, you want to make sure they're all in the same folder to begin with. I know that might cause some errors as well if you have one file in one folder and another one in another folder. So make sure they're all in the same folder. And then you write script. The source for the script is script.js. So we're declaring that we want to look for a script, and this is the title of the script. It's going to look within the directory to find a document with this title, and then here's the end tag. And then here we can start writing our JavaScript code. So since we don't have that much time, I'm just going to copy and paste some code that I wrote earlier, which is this function called add random greeting. So what this does is I have this array that has different greetings and saying hello in different languages. And it's gonna pick a random word out of this list, out of this array. So the way it does that is it uses the math.random function, which generates a random number between 0 and 1. And it's going to multiply that by the length of this array, which is 4. And so it's going to give a random number between 0 and 4. And it's going to grab the element or the item with that index with it from this array. So, and it does this by saying greetings, and it's going to say, let's say the random number that was generated is 2. Actually, well, the way indices work, it starts with 0, so it's going to look 0, 1, 2, and it's going to take this greeting hello in German. And so that's going to be the greeting. It's going to be saved into this greeting variable or constant. And then the way we add it into the HTML code is by looking for an element with a specific ID, and we get to decide what that ID is. And we're gonna write this. Greeting inner text equals greeting. So we're gonna add this as the inner text for whatever element has this ID. So let's go back to the HTML file. And let's write, let's create this division, or this class that it's going to look for, or this ID that it's going to look for. So we'll do that using a division, and we'll write the ID that we're looking for, which is greeting container. And I got that from here because I'm looking for something called greeting container. And then what we want to do is we want to have a button that when you click it, it gives you a random greeting. So the way we do that is by writing button, and then on click, you want to define what happens when you click it. So I want to run the JavaScript function that I called random greeting. And then here I can say random greeting. This is what's going to be displayed within the button. And then that's it. So make sure I'm just not missing anything. Yeah, I have the opening and closing tabs, and then it's gonna add whatever the random greeting is between the opening and closing tabs of this division. So let's try this out. So if we reload this, we can see there's a button now. When we press the button, oh, sorry. I need to save the JavaScript file. And I also want to make sure that I have everything written exactly the same, because if it's not written exactly the same, then it's not going to know where to look. Let's see this again.
You wrote onlick instead of on click.
Oh, there it is. Thanks so much. I wouldn't have noticed that. There it is. And you can see if I click it several times, I get different greetings every time. So yeah, that's pretty cool. And that's the type of stuff you can do with JavaScript. You have that user interaction aspect. And you can get really creative with it. Some tips on JavaScript. Start off with low-level functionalities, like what I just did, like a little button that displays some info. But you can look online for inspiration at any time. There's people that have come up with some great stuff using JavaScript. So I really recommend taking your time to browse through more portfolios, see what people have come up with, try to come up with your own ideas, and you can come up with something really cool. And then, like always, I recommend making comments. And so comments for JavaScript, they look like this. You two slashes like that. And then this function displays a random tree. Again, it just helps you read the file more easily. You can give more explanations for what the code is actually doing. And again, comments always help if you're doing peer review. If you want someone to help you with your code, you want to have comments to explain what's actually happening in there. So some general advice between HTML, CSS, and JavaScript as you're writing this is that Google is your best friend. If you can't figure out how to do something, most likely is someone has done it before. So just type your question and you're going to be able to find some solution online. I'm sure of it. And if you're stuck on something for more than 15 minutes, this is a rule that I heard in a program that I did last summer. If you're stuck for more than 15 minutes writing code, either move on or ask for help, and ask for help from someone who's very experienced in this. Don't spend too much time fixated on one thing. Just remember on having a minimum viable product and that you have all the key elements on the screen that you truly need without, wasting your time on stuff that doesn't add that much value to your portfolio. And these are some websites that are always helpful. Stack Overflow always helps with programming, especially with JavaScript. You can find a lot of information in Stack Overflow. And then this website called W3 Schools has a lot of information about HTML and CSS. So if you want to find out how to do specific things, you can go to W3 Schools. So now, let's say we created our full website. We have exactly what we want it to look like. Sure, I'll go back to the HTML file. I'll upload these files later so that everyone can see exactly what I wrote. And you can also use these as a basis to start creating your own files. Is that good, Alyssa?
Yeah, it's just for some reason, it's not reading anything from my CSS file.
Are you sure? Have you made sure that it's oh, sorry, that you have exactly something like this and then that?
Yeah. Yeah, I just wanted to check that.
Okay. You can stay after the workshop and we'll try to work through it.
Right, okay.
But yeah, let's say we have our portfolio looking like how we want it to look, and we've been, going back and forth through here, and we're ready to put it into a live server. So once you want to publish your website to the world so that anyone can access it, there's two things you want to consider. You want to put it into a server. So a server is a physical location where your website will be stored, and it's actually like a physical location. Somewhere out there, there's going to be some, machine that's going to be storing your files, and it's going to be publishing them to the world so that people can access that server. Access to servers isn't usually free. So I have as the first rule is to purchase some space in a server. But I'll go over some tips on that later. And then you also want to have a domain, and the domain is your website's name shown in the URL. So for example, my friend's domain, he literally was able to get a domain with his actual first and last name. And usually you're going to have to purchase a domain because there's a relatively limited supply of domains out there. A lot of some domains are more expensive than others based on what the words you are using are. So once you have a server and a domain, you can upload your index.html, style.css, and script.js files into that server so that it'll host your information for anyone in the world to access it through the internet. And so here's probably the biggest tip that I'm going to give throughout this entire workshop, which is to use the GitHub Student Developer Pack. And I put a link to it here. And if you go to the GitHub Student Developer Pack, you can, as long as you're a university student or any student at all, you can register as a student in GitHub and you have access to all these resources. So for example, you have Namecheap, which gives you 1 year domain name registration. So there you don't have to pay for a domain. And here's another one, name.com. So you can look through here and try to find different things so that in the end, as long as you're a student, you don't have to pay for server access or for your own domain. And another good thing about these is that it makes it incredibly easy to just upload your files. You just register and then you upload your files. And then that's all you need. You link it to your domain, and that's all you need. I'm not going to go through it because, well, one, we're out of time, and also two, it's different for every service that you use. I put a list here of different services that you might use. So name.com gives you a free year of domain, and then Tech Domains also gives you a free year of domain, and then this one called NetWise gives you a free single unit server colocation package, free for 12 months. So that's literally exactly what we're looking for. We want to have some location in the server that'll host your website. And through the GitHub Student Developer Pack, you can get that for free for 12 months using this service. So again, I really recommend getting the Student Developer Pack from GitHub. I'll send a link to it right now, actually, if you guys want to get involved with that right away. And yeah, we've gone a little over time, so I'm gonna end the workshop here. But if you have any more questions, I'm gonna stick around. But regardless, thanks so much for coming. I hope you learned, and I hope you are able to make your portfolio. It takes a lot of time, but it's really worth it in the end. I really, really think it's a great investment to dedicate some time into creating your own portfolio.